So I'm gonna say it this way. Well, first let me say the weights. 199 for both. November the 20th, 2014. They weighed in at Liverpool today. 14 stones, 3 pounds, from what I've learned. So long story short, I'm gonna say 28 wins, 1 loss, 14 knockouts. Nathan Clev cleverly has the better resume. Courtney Fry, Tony Bellew, Sergey Kovalev, Carol Murat, and I'm missing somebody else. But the point I'm trying to make is that he has the experience, but yet he's the better boxer, the better athlete, and of course he has the better body, but yet it just seems something is missing. To whereas I look at Tony Bellew, he has the bigger heart to me. By the way, he's 22-2 with 14 KOs. So he's the same amount of KOs and, less fights. So even if you look at the fact that, okay, all right, cleverly beat him one time. Well, if you're saying that Bomber wasn't a natural 175 pounder, then in his natural element at cruiserweight, and I don't think he's not a heavyweight in any way, shape, or form. As a cruiserweight, I feel that he has the better chance to turn that majority decision into maybe the majority or split decision, maybe even knockout, going towards his side as far as, him knocking out Cleverly. So I don't see Cleverly stopping him, even though Tony Bellew was stopped. If you look at the way they were both stopped, one against Sergey Kovalev, one against Adonis Stevenson, yes, they both got knocked out, but look at, So what I'm saying is this. You got Bellew who went to his natural position. His natural weight. To whereas in you got Cleverly who basically he couldn't. It was like, all right, fuck it. There's nothing else more for me to do, at the 175 pound division. He couldn't beat nobody in that division. And when it came down to Bernard Hopkins, remember he wanted that fight, but at that point in time, he was what Frank Warren, Nathan Cleverly was, and they were going back and forth on Twitter. Basically Bernard Hopkins wanted no parts. As far as thinking that Cleverly, he didn't have nothing, even though he had that WBO title that Sergey Kovalev has, but Sergey Kovalev knocked him out. So I'm saying this, I'm T-Street Controversy. This is T-Street Controversy Live. I cover every single major fight live. Yes, it seems like I'm rambling, but you have to understand my presentation is talking to you like we're friends. So therefore, I don't have to worry about, getting all nervous, reading off of a script and all that type of shit. Nah, we're going to talk about some boxing. So when you look at the cruiserweight division, matter of fact, let's just isolate it to this fight. Fans are upset that it's a pay-per-view fight. I cover your boxing over here from the United States. So even I know that's not a pay-per-view fight. Somewhere along the lines of Adrian Broner versus Marcos Maidana. Now, even though Marcos Maidana won and it was one of the most exciting fights of the year, later on we could say, okay, I would have paid for that. But realistically, it wasn't a pay-per-view fight. But this one squeezed its way on the pay-per-view, and I forgot, what is it, like 16 pounds or something? What's that, like $29 in the US, something like that, $30. Long story short, I'm not going to get caught up in the math. But what I'm trying to say is, if it was over in the United States and I had to pay $30 for it, it was just $30, despite the fact that Manny Pacquiao versus Chris Algieri is $70, and then Mayweather versus Maidana was $75, and then we had Canelo versus Lawler, which was $60, and then we had Mayweather versus Maidana, and then Cotto versus So I had to dish out a lot of money this year. So I'm thinking, okay, all right, a fight like that, cut it in half, and say, okay, you can't charge $60 for it like you would charge, let's say, for example, I don't know how much Frotz versus Grills cost you over there. But if it was over here in the United States, it would be like $60, $70 if it was on pay-per-view. So I'm saying if Adrian Broner versus Marcos Maidana was on pay-per-view and it was only $30 and it wasn't that full $60 that they're known to charge us, I would have purchased it. So basically, I'm saying I can see why Tony Bellew versus Nathan Cleverly is on pay-per-view. I can see why you have to pay for it. And to be honest with you, from what I'm seeing over here from the States, the turnout to the press conferences, the excitement of the press conference, the fact that both fighters, mostly Tony Bellew, has been able to sell the fight. And then you look at the crowd at the weigh-in today, you would think that Floyd Mayweather was fighting. But even though I know and understand that, the fans over in the UK are much more, in my opinion, passionate about boxers than we are in the United States, because over here boxers have to be somewhat of celebrities in order for them to resonate with, different demographics. I'm not gonna get into all that. But long story short, this is a fight where both fighters, it's a tough because they both had 2 fights at cruiserweight. Cleverly knocked out his 2. Bellew in his first fight at cruiserweight, I'm talking about at his second stint. Remember, he was cruiserweight before. At his second stint, he didn't look so good, but he went the distance, and then his second fight, he knocked him out. So in cruiserweight, the cruiserweight division, what I'm telling you is that the reason why I'm going with Bellew is because he's more natural there. That's him, to whereas in Cleverly, he's got to put on some, he had to put on that muscle, that nearly 25 pounds of muscle, to whereas in Bellew, it was like, oh, all right, I don't have to cut all that weight. I'll just, get in shape, and it's a lot more comfortable. So, long story short, I'm T-Street Controversy with Real Combat Media. I cover every single major fight live. So as far as that fight, I'm thinking about cover. Okay, here's what I do since I got the time to explain it. When I cover one fight or fighter for the first time, that means I'm going to continue to cover him. So I watch all the Scott Quigg fights. I watch all the Callum Smith fights. But the thing is, I didn't add them to the rotation, because if you look at it, I got to cover a lot of fights. So I don't want to put myself in situations where it's certain fights I can't cover, because I got a lot of other shit going on. So if it's a Saturday, for example, tomorrow is going to be one of the biggest days in boxing this year, because not only do I got to cover your card over there, which starts at about 1 p.m. or so our time, then it's going to be over at about 6 p.m. or so our time. Then our event for Pacquiao versus Jiri starts at about 9 p.m. over here, so which gives me about a 2-3 hour window. Then I got to cover the cards on there, and then Google Hangout after, which is a live streaming chat service that I do like right after. What I do is, after the fight goes off, I wait about an hour, and I'm talking about Pacquiao versus Jiri. I wait about an hour, maybe hour and a half, 2 hours. I try to wait for the post-fight press conference. I try to go on like right after the post-fight press conference, because for a fight like this, you'll get a lot of information, meaning Pacquiao, Jiri, and Cleverly versus Bellew. I try to wait for the post-fight press conference to come out so I can, get that final information. But when it comes to a guy like Callum Smith, yes, I added his brother to the rotation. I don't believe I covered a Paul Smith fight until the Arthur Abraham. I think I may have covered one. I don't remember. But what I do is, now since I cover Paul Smith, I'm going to cover every Paul Smith fight from now on. I've been covering Matthew Macklin fights for a long time. I've been covering his fights on. So Scott Quigg, I haven't covered a Scott Quigg fight yet. I've been covering Carl Frampton fights, but now it's time to add Scott Quigg to the rotation. So you see what I'm saying? So, it's a method. People say, why haven't you covered this person? Or why haven't you covered that person? Don't worry. When the time comes, I cover the person. So right now, I'm doing something that I've never done before, is I'm covering a fighter as they're coming up, meaning Anthony A.J. Joshua. I've covered, this is his 10th fight. You can say I covered 7 out of 10 of them. Simple as that. But long story short, T-Street Controversy Live. Yes, I know I got a big day and I got to get my voice right. Please subscribe.